You mentioned something about how you got there was probably different to how you thought you would get there. What was that difference?
I had to be real about the situation I was in. I was very confident in my skills as a quantity surveyor. For example, I knew that I could deliver regeneration projects with 1,000 residential units. But starting my practice, I couldn't go for those kind of bids. I had to look at what it was that we could offer and create really bespoke offerings for some, domestic clients who just wanted to do an extension or a loft conversion. How could I align myself with, previous clients or other contractors to build our portfolio up so then we could sit in front of bigger players like some of the clients we have now.
This is the Property Development Book Club podcast. Please be advised that the views expressed are of the individuals and do not represent their employers and should not be taken as advice. Please do your own research and seek advice from an appointed professional.
Hello and welcome to the Property Development Book Club podcast. My name is Locken. I'm the founder and CEO of We Rise In, and I'm going to be hosting today's session in conversation with Klotey Quaye, founder and director of Quaye Services. Lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I think that you've been on the podcast a couple of times, or is it your first time?
No, this is my first time.
Perfect.
You've interviewed me before, that's what it is.
That's it. Yeah, so for those kind of listening, watching, I've interviewed way back when, 2020, during the pandemic, when he set up his business. And now, sort of 5 years on, we're really looking at, I guess, where it's at now, where the business is at now. So before we get started into the conversation, please introduce yourself for those that don't know you. Who are you? Give us a little bit about your background and your story to where you're at now.
Yeah, so my name is Klotey Quaye. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor. This year will be my 18th year as a QS. Did my first ever work experience in 2006. A main contractor called Balfour Beatty, which I'm sure most people know. They sponsored me through university, gave me a job out of university, a graduate role. I stayed there until about 2013 when I left to go consultancy. I made that decision because I wanted to have a better view of the industry. I realised that working with a contractor, whilst you're close to the ground and you have an understanding of how buildings go together, there wasn't a whole view of the industry. I wanted to understand how clients thought and have a better technical understanding of my role. And since then, I've been a consultant quantity surveyor.
Cool. So for those that might be listening that don't understand the quantity surveying terminology, yes. So quantity surveyor, or QS for short, is someone who manages costs. So if you think about any large scale development, there needs to be a surveyor that can understand how much it's going to cost to build that thing, but then also to manage the cost as the project goes through. So that's essentially what you did whilst you were kind of working for others, and then you set up your own business, which is now fully established. You've got a number of associates within the business. Talk to us about maybe some of the challenges that you faced in kind of getting it to these 5 years, because as a lot of people know, most businesses fail in the first 5 years. You've obviously are a success story. So no doubt there's a lot that you've kind of gone through to come out the other end. So talk to us about some of those challenges and successes.
Yeah, I say the main challenge, or the first challenge I had, was going from that employee mindset to a business owner mindset, not being so task driven, which is difficult because the task is the product. That's what you're selling, that service. But understanding that I wanted to work on large scale projects, not focus on freelance type of schemes and activities. So something that I read, I forget which book it was in, but that really helped shape my mind, is when you have a problem, don't think how, think who. So quite quickly I tried to build a team around me, and we've done that quite successfully over the last 5 years, mixture of employees and preferred suppliers or consultants that work with us really closely.
So were there any people on that journey that supported you in shaping your mindset and to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. People like yourself. My
Stop it.
My immediate network, I'd say, that I'd built up through the years of being a QS, and people that I'd poured into with helping get chartered as well. I used to run a APC workshop. For people who don't know, the APC is what the RICS use to give people charter status. So in doing things like that, that allowed me to build, a really positive and strong network. Obviously, clients and other consultants that I'd worked with that had a positive view of working with me, they really supported me. But then in terms of really specific and intentional relationships, I joined what was called the Black Founders Hub, started by David McQueen. That was in the second year of business. And following that, my late mentor and coach, Francis Mainu, spent 6 months with me fortnightly, coaching me and my mindset to make sure that the business was growing and moving in the direction that it needed to be.
So to touch on your mentor, actually, so Francis was someone that Nee introduced me to when I was taking that leap from employee to being self-employed or to actually running a business. And again, mindset was something that I was struggling with at the time, more because coming from an immigrant background and growing up in the sort of council home environment, I guess our mindset was around money particularly was one of scarcity, and one where, I'd built up this career, 10 plus year career, working in real estate, gotten all the credentials I needed and was earning decent money, to then have to basically go back to a certain level of insecurity. Right. I recognized that I needed that kind of help in getting that confidence, and that's where Nee kindly introduced me to Francis, and I worked with Francis in a similar way, 6 months, every fortnight. And one of the key things that I took from him was growth mindset. Yeah. So really having that vision and having that unwavering belief in yourself that you can achieve the unachievable. So how have you used growth mindset to get you to the projects that you're managing now? You're, doing some large scale development projects with your clients. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, a lot of patience, to be honest. I think there's this attitude and idea that, once you become a business owner, everyone wants to be like the high flying entrepreneur because that's what's pushed to us. And it's amazing to have those inspirational success stories, but actually the journey is long. It is in all the small things that you do, like building the right team, understanding the service that you have, targeting the right clients, because not all money is good money. But if we are very focused, and if I was very focused on getting as much money as quick as possible, I would have been taking the wrong opportunities that didn't align with the vision. So something Francis helped me do is understand what my why was, understand what the vision was for the business, and break that down into small component parts and just execute those, keep showing up for those things each and every day so you can grow, so we could grow, and that's the legacy he's left.
So what was the vision for the company when you started?
Yeah.
Is it still the same vision? Has it changed? Is it evolving? What is it now?
It's evolving. I think when I started, it was, get to year 5 and effectively do what it is that we're doing now, which is working with many local authorities, working with small developers to do a range of projects and have a strong and stable team. And I'm pleased to say that we've done that. This looks like what I wanted it to look like. How we've got there has been slightly different. But we've done that over these last 5 years, thanks to our team, Irene, Farkid, Odiri, many of the different consultants that we work with. Going forward, that evolution looks like, having a development sister company and, international as well. I'd like to do some work in Africa also.
I love that. Oh my gosh, there's so much to pick from that. You mentioned something about, how you got there was probably different to how you thought you would get there. What was that difference, and how did you pivot or change or become flexible in those moments where, maybe you weren't going down the path that you envisioned?
Yeah, I had to be real about the situation I was in. I was very confident in my skills as a quantity surveyor, but that wasn't going to be the only thing that propelled us. And also I didn't have a machine behind me like I did when I was employed. So, for example, I knew that I could deliver regeneration projects with 1,000 residential units, but starting my practice, I couldn't go for those kind of bids. I had to look at what it was that we could offer and create really bespoke offerings for some, domestic clients who just wanted to do an extension or a loft conversion. What was going to be my offering in a situation like that? How could I align myself with, previous clients or other consultancies, other contractors to build our portfolio up so then we could sit in front of bigger players like some of the clients we have now, Waltham Forest, Epsom and Ewell Council, the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton, and say, we are the right business for you. So understanding that there had to be almost like a review of the cards that I had, and play those well, rather than thinking I was in the same position I was, that allowed me to be successful in my employment.
And so did you have a time frame in your mind as to when you wanted to graduate from kind of working with, I guess, the more boutique developers to then working with the large scale public authority bodies like you used to? Was there a time frame, or did it kind of just naturally happen?
It was as soon as possible. I put plans in place and processes in place to make that happen really early on. So within 18 months of us starting our business, we got put on a framework that serves London and the South East, which was the LHC framework. And that was, it was good. It was good for us, because it put us in the same league as my previous employer and some other heavy hitters in the consultancy world. So once we got through that door, that allowed us to have conversations with these local authorities. I think Lambeth Council were one of the first clients that we had off the back of that. So yeah, that plan was put in place straight away, and we implemented as much as we could.
Awesome. I think I just want to further explain to those that are listening who might not come from a property industry background, that don't understand the importance of getting onto these frameworks. So for a lot of local authority or public sector bodies, they have a set list of suppliers, let's say. And if you're someone who's started out or you're new and you want to do work with the likes of Lambeth Council, you have to go through quite a rigorous, I guess, application to a degree, to be signed off and approved as a supplier for that particular business. So, I mean, you say it very lightly, but the fact that you got onto that framework, that's huge. It's it validates, I guess, yourself, your business, everything that you did to get to that point, and to do it within 18 months of setting up, that's amazing. So kudos to you and the team for getting there. So we've spoken about kind of the mindset, the growth, getting yourself to this place now where you're doing some really amazing projects like the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton and that kind of stuff. So talk to me about what's your, I guess, maybe most challenging project that you guys are currently working on, and what's the most exciting? What excites you?
How do you define challenging? I think it's probably one of our smaller schemes, or the smaller schemes, because you're working with developers who have very small margins of error. They don't necessarily know much about construction. So not only are you managing the project, you're managing them and their expectations also. So I think my smaller projects are the ones that are tough. But that's where we actually get to show most of our value. When you're working on schemes that, 5-10 million plus, local authorities, they tend to have a bit more money. There is room and time to make decisions that developers don't, because sometimes they put all their eggs in one basket and they need that to work, and it needs to turn over quite quickly. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
The second part was what's your most exciting project at the moment, or one that you're excited to be working on?
I would say the Epsom and Ewell Town Hall relocation project is big. It's one of our biggest wins in terms of status. They were a council with a long-standing history. We won that through the LHC framework, and I think after being on the framework, this was the next step for us to show how far we'd come as a business, because as I mentioned, on that in our lot, it was a competitive tender, and in our lot there were big companies, really, really big companies. For us to win that and to be chosen by that local authority means that we're doing something right, and we were able to demonstrate our experience. So I'm really excited about delivering that project. We're still in the early stages, but it looks good. But going back to the Black Cultural Archives, that's the type of job that we want to be involved in as a business. And one of the reasons why I set up the practice as well, because I felt like working for someone else, there's certain conversations, certain opportunities I wouldn't necessarily be able to engage in, and projects I would be able to take on because maybe it didn't align with their business. But to be, us working on such a significant building in Lambeth, it means a lot.
So you've mentioned, I guess, the value that you add for some of the smaller developers in that it's almost like a hand-holding process. You know, you're not only their consultant sort of working with them, but you're really guiding them through the process. What would you say is your value add at that higher level? So like the Epsom project where you won the tender, you won the bid when you were kind of pitched against some of the other maybe bigger players. What do you think was the value add and the reason why they chose Quaye services over maybe a more longer established consultancy?
Yeah, I think it's that in-depth understanding and the fact that they have true director level involvement. Big companies, they may have larger resource, but the heads of those companies have got a lot more to manage. You only get as much out of them as they've allowed for in their tender. Whereas with our business, I've got hands on almost everything. You know, oversee every project. We have weekly meetings with our team to make sure that things are being done the right way. So that feedback was there from the local authority that said, you know, we wanted to work with you because it's you. But as a business also, I think what tends to happen with larger organizations is whilst they may have an understanding of their business and their direction, the real in-depth technical understanding may not be there. So we get to pick apart all the different ideas that they may have and say, look, here's a plan that works well. Here's a plan that delivers your project, and make sure you get best value from this scheme. So I think it's a mixture of those two things.
So question for you then, if currently that value add is the fact that you are still quite involved, you know, with those projects, knowing where I know your business is going, which, you know, you mentioned international, you know, bigger projects, etc. There may come a time where you can't be as directly involved. How are you, I guess, planning for that, foreseeing that? What kind of things are you putting in place now such that when it gets to that point, your existing clients will still feel that personableness, even if you're not necessarily working in the project?
Yeah, one of the things I really pride myself on is having the conversations with our staff and our, you know, consultants about the way that, you know, I like to work. What is the foundation of our business? And the benefit of starting a business myself is you get to integrate that culture, those values in right from the beginning. So as it grows, those ideas, the ideologies, that attitude that we have towards client, that personable approach, you know, I would hope that they experience that whoever they engage with throughout our business. And as we grow and we add new people, that will always be part of the plan.
I love that. I love that. So you're building something from the ground up that has you really woven into the fabric, woven into the current staff, consultants that you work with, but also future. Absolutely.
And it's accountability as well. You know, I'm big on those same people saying, look, Nee, you said this thing, but you've gone in a different direction. Why is that? Having those conversations so they understand, and taking feedback, because I don't know everything. And I think that's also a key thing for me to be aware of. The people that work around me are definitely more knowledgeable in different areas than I am, and taking all of those thoughts, ideas, and creating something that's worthwhile is really important.
Cool. So my next question was going to be, what's next for the business? And you've kind of alluded to it in terms of those international opportunities and potentially going opportunities in Africa or on the continent. What can you, I guess, define that a bit more? Like, do you have a time frame as to when you want that executed? How are you working towards, I guess, making that happen?
Yeah, so the conversations in Africa are always ongoing. 5 years is the time frame for that. I think my energy and attention needs to be on what it is that's being built here. I do think it's important that my attention isn't being dragged all over the place. I'm currently reading a book called The One Thing, and that you know, that idea, that approach applies on a macro level, but also on a micro level.
Could you summarise The One Thing book?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite early in the process, but it effectively says that 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts. So it's whittling down the to-do list. You know, if I write my to-do list, it will be arm's length, but what is the one thing that makes my day successful? If it's about a project, what is the one thing I need to do on this project right now that gets a maximum effect? And that's really the attitude that I want to have towards this business. How can I really focus in this next period of time to make it really strong, really strong. So with regards to the Africa thing, that is a slightly more, mid to long term. The development arm is something that can be done in tandem because we're already providing the services. And I know we can do that well, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's the shorter term, for sure.
I love that. I love the idea about focusing. I can't remember who said it, but they said focus is almost an acronym. So follow one course until successful. And that's something that always stuck with me. And I think when you're starting out yourself, for anyone that's listening who's thinking, okay, I'm ready to make that leap into, either self-employed, sole trader, or even just setting up a business like Nee's done, that being able to really zero in and focus and follow one course until you get to a successful stage is so important, because otherwise if you're scattergun or your brain is divided, your team's going to be divided. You've got to, as a director and a leader, you've got to have your guiding principles, which then can trickle down and be imparted to your associates or people you're working with.
Absolutely. And naturally, as humans, those moments are going to occur. But this is where the accountability comes in. That's where the strong network comes in. Having, a coach or somebody that can help you really just, focus your mind, and having your own personal rituals in place, like, whether it's staying healthy, being in the gym, whether it's meditation, those kind of things that bring you back to that point, almost like that beacon. That beacon is really important.
Right, so where can people find you if they want to solicit your services or your business? How can they find you?
Our website is www.quayeservices.com, and you'll find all of our information there.
Cool. It's been wonderful having you on the podcast today, and maybe we'll have you in 5 years' time as well. Once you're, all the international projects.
Let's make it a thing every 5 years.
We'll sit down and talk. Check in.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. I've been Faith Locken, and this is the Property Development Book Club podcast.
Building dreams we can in the privacy book club. We're racing up the road.